It's been over 2 years since I studied abroad, and it's been over a year since I made my first study abroad advice video, and I just felt like there needed to be a part 2. There needed to be a follow-up. My life has changed so much since I filmed the first one, and the video has honestly taken on a life of its own, so I just feel inclined to make a second video because people reach out to me almost more now than they ever have before about that video and ask me questions, so I just thought I would make an updated study abroad advice video. I honestly stand by everything I said in that video and every take that I had and every piece of advice that I gave, but I just feel like I was very close to my study abroad at that point still. But now it's been years, I can say, which is crazy because it's been over 2 years since I started my study abroad. So I just feel like I'm in a place now where I can truly and honestly reflect on the experience rather than be so emotionally tied to it still. When I filmed my first video, I was only 6 months out of the experience, which can seem like a long time, but is really not. So I would say like my recommendations and my tips and stuff all stay true, and I stand by everything that I said, but my feelings and advice probably has changed the most drastically since a year ago today. Also, I've gotten more comments and DMs about that video now more than ever because a new wave of people are studying abroad right now, and I just want to say something. Like, I feel very honored that people have reached out to me. It's very sweet and I love it, and it's honestly the sweetest thing ever because that's something I would and did do when I first studied abroad. 2 years ago, I used to sleep restlessly every night in this bed because I was so anxious about studying abroad. I thought I was gonna forget something. I thought I was gonna have a miserable experience. I was just so worried. And when I finally just let all of that go, I had the best time of my life. So I just feel like I need to reassure people. I think there is a balance between research and just trusting yourself and knowing that your life is gonna change and you're gonna be in a new city, and so a lot of things are gonna be different, but you are still the same person just in a new place, and that is totally fine. And I think it is good to find comfort in that you are gonna be the same, but then your surroundings are just gonna be different. So just for some background, I left for my study abroad program January 14th, 2023. At the time, I was a second semester junior in college. Now I have graduated college, which is crazy. I did the whole semester abroad, and my home university, Hofstra University in New York, doesn't have a semester-long study abroad program, and I knew that's what I wanted to do. So I studied abroad through CIS abroad, which is the best decision I ever made, and I stand by that forever. So I studied through CIS abroad's University of Westminster exchange program, and I loved it. I think CIS was a very easy company to work with. All the people there are very kind, and I think looking back, the way that they set up the program, perfect. Literally perfection. They had us all meet at the airport on the same day, January 14th, and we all waited for each other. The whole group met each other that first day at the airport, and then we all split up into our groups of who was living with who, and we went together to our living quarters for the first time. So it was a very instantly bonded situation. That day I arrived to the airport really early in the morning. I was one of the first people to get there, and we waited throughout the whole day for everyone to arrive, which sounds like it would be a bore, but it was actually the best experience ever because we all just spent time getting to know each other and hanging out and just soaking in the fact that we're now in London and we're gonna be here for 5 months, 6 months. Another thing that they did, I think, really well was that they had a welcome lunch, welcome orientation, all that, and then they kind of sent you off where they supported you. They reached out, made sure you were doing okay, but kind of let you do your own thing, and then had little programs sprinkled throughout the semester where you could participate or you could not. I would definitely recommend participating in them. I would recommend connecting with everyone in your program, using them as people to lean on because they're from your home country, so you have some similarities and some shared experience of living in a new country. and it's also just like built-in best friends kind of. I studied abroad by myself. Like I went into it knowing 0 people. I met everyone that day at the airport. So I think leaning on other people in your program is very important because they're just like your first friends, and they can be your last friends too. Like they can last, and you guys can lean on each other, and it's a good starting point and a point of comfort to know that you have this group of like 20 to 30 individuals that if you need them, they're there, and they're always gonna look out for each other because it is this like shared joint experience. So going back to the program, University of Westminster has 3 campuses in London. I lived in the Harrow campus because that is more like for arts and communications, and I am was a journalism major, so most of my classes were arts related. Even though I only had 1 class on Harrow's campus, that's where I lived, because it was just like all students studying similar things, which I did appreciate, because then when I was in my classes and I was at Harrow, when I talked to people who actually went to the University of Westminster, some of them were actually in a similar major to me, so it was just like nice common ground. But one thing I stressed a lot about when I was at home before my study abroad was living. London as a city is hard to understand unless you have lived there, because it's just so massive. I dare you right now to look at a map of London and find Harrow. You're gonna be like, Sophia, that's not even in London. Like that looks like it's so far outside of London. There are places way further that are still considered London. And it only took me about 15 minutes on public transportation on the tube to get into central London. So it's way bigger than you think, and there isn't just like Buckingham Palace, and if you're far from Buckingham Palace, you're like not in London. It's just not how the city works. So what I would say is don't stress out so much about where you live, what section you live in, and how far it is from certain things, because it's really easy to get around. Would it have been easier to live at Marylebone or Alexander Fleming, the other 2 Westminster campuses? Maybe. But would I have had a completely different and possibly not as good experience? Probably. So there's pros and cons to everything. I'd say the pros of living in Harrow, which is technically zone 4 of London, cheaper. I was surrounded by kids who studied similar things to me. I was exposed to more of like the reality of London, I'd say. I actually like can't even list all the pros because there's actually so many. The only con would be sometimes getting home from a night out, you'd have to get an Uber because sometimes the tube didn't run all night and taking a bus would take forever. Like that's the only con, to be so for real. Oh, another pro to Harrow is that there's literally a tube stop on campus. There's also just like a cultural pro to living in a more residential area. Like I used to get my nails done at this girl's house. This girl used to do my nails at her house. Like a British girl used to do my nails at her house. Like that's like the type of shit that doesn't happen if you just live in like Marylebone, you know? Okay, now I'm gonna move into some advice that I have that is just adding and piggybacking off of everything I said in the last video, because I stand by everything I said. There's just some like alterations and enhancements to what I said previously. So the first thing, which is something that I did last time and I'm really proud of, kind of like setting an intention about the whole experience. And then basically just like prioritizing whenever you specifically studied abroad for. And let me explain, because that doesn't really make any sense. My intention when I studied abroad was to say yes to everything, be open to new opportunities, and just like have fun, because the year before was not very fun, and I think I just was ready for a fun new experience. So then when I went, my like resolution or my way to implement that was to say yes to everything. And in the first month or 2, I did that. Eventually I got burnt out, which is fine, but in the first month, like I was saying yes to every single thing anyone asked me to. And I didn't tell anyone that, but I was just doing it. And that was the reason why I had so many amazing opportunities, especially in the first month, that I took advantage of, and that just kind of set me off on the right foot. Also, a good part of this is that there's normally like a 2-week period in between when you land and when you start classes. So if you're really taking advantage of that 2-week period, you can fit in so much good stuff and meet so many people, and then those are the people that you're going to carry with throughout the whole time, and that you can build on those relationships and those experiences. But like for me personally, those first 1.5 weeks, 2 weeks before I started classes, I went crazy. Like I did so much. When I think about it now, I'm like, oh my god, how did I fit in that much? We were going out every day. Like I barely slept. I was basically nocturnal, but we were also like seeing all of the sights and like going to like all the monuments and all that. Like that was so fun. That was like peak study abroad. I think that is when you can have like some of the most fun and just like do whatever you want, because at that point you have no responsibilities. You're in a new city and you can just do everything and anything. So if I could go back and tell myself 2 pieces of advice before leaving, it would be that say yes to everything, do as much as you can like in the first 2 weeks, like be very open to the opportunity. And the second piece of advice would be stay up to date and involved with your home life, but don't be tied down to it. And don't have one foot out the door and one foot in the door and half-ass the experience because you know you're going home eventually. I think there's definitely a balance to be had, and I think I knew a lot of people who had too much weight in their home life and it was holding them back from what was going on. So I think that there's a good balance between staying grounded in your experience, but also like have a weekly phone call with your best friend, or like text your mom every day to tell her like, look at this sandwich I'm eating, or like, look at me and my friends. Like I used to send my mom photo dumps, which was it was such like a cute idea and it was perfect. Don't worry about what's going on at home. Don't think too much about what your friends are doing. If they're studying abroad somewhere else, if they're back at home, don't worry about that. Like you're making your own life and you're having new experiences, and that is all really good for you. But you know, also like stay up to date and stay connected with your friends. I think there's a balance there, and it's important to find that balance, and whatever works for you works for you. Okay, those are the things that I would tell my past self, and I think that like she knew all those things, but I wish I could just like re-instill them in her. But now I'm going to go into things I stand by for my last video, things I'm like absolutely like I back those 100%, and then things that I wish I did or I wish I knew. So I 100% stand by documenting everything. Take so many pictures, take lots of videos. If you have like a vlog camera, vlog it. Those are the videos that I watch back the most and that I enjoy the most, and I'm just so glad I recorded them because it's such a unique experience to be able to like watch yourself back and watch you and your friends back. About 2 or 3 times a month since I left study abroad, which is how many times? Like a lot. I will have a night at like 2 a.m. where I'm like, I'm gonna rewatch all my study abroad videos. And I do. And I cry and I laugh and I'm like happy and I'm sad and everything, but it's just the best experience. To be able to look back on that in just such a real way, I love it. Another thing I stand by is knowing your home city / country before you know anything else. The first month, I didn't leave London. I want to say the first trip I went on was like late February, early March, and that was just such a nice thing to do. It kind of just happened accidentally, but I'm so glad it happened. I think it's so important to know and understand your home city and not leave feeling like a stranger to it. I understand wanting to take advantage of the fact that Europe is so close together and seeing as many countries as you can. I understand that, but you know, I chose London for a reason, and I'm sure everyone chooses their own city for a reason, and I left feeling like that was my home. When I went on my first trip, I remember feeling homesick for London, and when I was going back, feeling like I was going home. Another thing is, don't be afraid to do things alone. Especially in London. If you're going to London, it's probably like the capital city of doing things alone, I feel like. because I do a lot of stuff alone. I'm very much an advocate for doing things alone. London is the city where no one bats an eye. If you're out by yourself, like alone, you're probably gonna see 20 other people also alone doing the exact same thing. It's so normal. So I'd say do things alone and like don't wait around for other people. Because also when you're alone, you tend to meet new people, experience new opportunities, and it's also just a good grounding point. It's a good time to like reflect on what's going on around you and really take things in and like have a self check-in. Some of the moments and memories that I think of the most and the fondest happened when I was alone in London, like in a park or in a cafe or in a museum. Like some of those moments are when I'm like, damn, I miss that. I miss that moment. Not when I was like in a club with 1,000 people, like when I was alone with myself, just like reading or eating or looking at some beautiful art. Also, I 100% stand by watching like a bunch of British movies before leaving. Me and my mom did the biggest British movie binge of my whole life before I left, and it was so fun, and I feel like it just set me up perfectly for the experience. We were watching like Notting Hill, Bridget Jones, The Holiday, Angus Thongs, like all of those movies. They're just fun, and then when you go and you're like, oh my god, Notting Hill, or like whatever, it's just a fun thing to do, and I would do that, and it like helps calm the nerves a little bit. Last thing I stand by, this is more of like a practical thing, but every time if you have anyone from home visit you, send them away with some of your stuff. Like if you have a jacket you're not wearing or like some clothes that you're not using or whatever, and your best friend comes to visit you, like send her away with it, because then that's one less thing you have to pack, and there's then that much more room for stuff you can buy while you're abroad. Because I had to buy a whole other suitcase to bring home the stuff, because somehow I had a whole other suitcases worth more of stuff. That didn't make sense, but you know what I mean? When I left, I had to buy a whole other suitcase. So don't be like me in that regard, and just send people home with your things. Okay, bouncing off of that, things that I wish I did, and I know this kind of relates to what I said before, but I wish I spent more time alone, which is kind of a crazy thing to say, but I prioritized time alone more towards the end, and I wish I just did it regularly throughout instead. I think it's important to like use time alone wisely and not be afraid to be like, I'm not gonna hang out with my friends today, I'm just gonna go to a museum or to a park, or I'm gonna do this thing that I wanted to do by myself. Maybe this thing is just for me, and that's totally fine. I wish I did that more, and I wish I like reflected more throughout, because I know I documented everything, but I didn't take a lot of time to be like, how am I feeling right now? Am I okay? Am I doing too much of this? Am I not doing enough of this for myself? So like journaling, I think would be a really important thing that if I went again, I would do that more every day or every week. Journal like how you're feeling, like those more intimate thoughts, because there's only so much a camera can say, right? Sometimes you have to like write that shit down. I would also say like grounding yourself in familiar things was something that I wish I did more. I wish I incorporated more parts of my like home routine into my abroad routine. I love to cook at home, and I barely cooked when I was abroad, but I wish I would have done more things like that that I enjoy. I think it's easy for the experience to kind of like get away from you, and maybe for it to get overwhelming at certain points, and to feel like things can get like out of control a little bit. But if you have kind of a similar routine to when you're at home, I think that can help with just like grounding and generally like staying true to yourself. I don't know, there's some decisions that I made and some experiences that I had that kind of, they just got overwhelming, and it got out of hand at a certain point, and it is a very overwhelming experience. So I think that like staying true to certain things about yourself, like if you like to cook, if you like to read, if you like to take a shower at night instead of the morning, like stick to those things and those routines, and those can help you, even though they seem small, like those things are important, and it's important not to just like let them go to the wayside just because you're in a new country, in a new city. Like, stay true to yourself. Stay true to yourself, okay? It sounds like I'm getting emotional. I remember one time I called my mom like 2 weeks into the program, and she said that it sounded like Love Island, in the sense that when you're watching the show, it's like a week in and people are like, I love you. And they're crying when people are leaving, and you're like, it's been a week. But a week in the villa feels like 3 weeks on the outside. That's what they used to say, right? I would say the same thing about studying abroad. A week abroad feels like 3 weeks at home. It's such a tightly packed emotional experience. So you go through like the ups and downs of life in this squished together time frame. So there's big emotions and big like issues to deal with because it's all happening so fast. So you're like, oh my god, it's only been a week, but it feels like a month. So it's hard, it's easy to like get overwhelmed and get in overwhelming situations, but you know, just like take some time to yourself, like do your own grounding rituals, like relax, you know, chill out. Also, something I wish I did was, if someone asks you on a date, especially a British guy, just go. I went on a couple dates, not a lot, and not nearly as many as like were asked of me. I wish I just went on every date, especially with like a British man, because why not? And like not investing a lot of emotional intention behind it. Just like go on a date just to experience a British man. Just do it. You know, if I could give advice out, it would be that. I would also say, if you're single, stay single. And I don't just mean don't get a boyfriend or don't get it like be in a relationship. Just be single, if that makes sense. Being single can kind of like open you up to opportunities, and being mentally single and free from attachment can be very good. A less serious thing that I wish I did was travel around England itself more. I pretty much stick to London, and I wish I traveled around England more. I went on a lot of trips to different countries, and I went all around London, but then I didn't go to like Brighton, I didn't go to like Oxford or Cambridge. I wish I would have went to those places. I've been to them before, but I didn't go when I was studying abroad, and I wish I did. So I wish I took more day trips outside of London, just for the day, like on the train. Okay, now I'm gonna go into some frequently asked questions from my last video, and just from like questions that I've gotten on that video, questions people have DM'd me that I feel like I probably should have addressed and want to address now. So the first one is fall or spring semester. And I would say spring semester every time, because you start cold and get warmer, which I feel like is easier, and you have unlimited time to stay after, because you have the summer after. Like if you go in the fall, you have to come back for the spring semester, right, of your homeschool. But if you go in the spring, you can stay into the summer as long as you want. Like I stayed in Europe probably a month after I finished my program. I stayed in London, I went to Scotland with my cousins, came back to London, and then I went to Sicily to visit my family there. So I had unlimited time. I didn't have to come back. Ever. I didn't want to come back ever, but eventually I did. So I would say spring semester, personally. Another question was my internship paid? I didn't talk about this before, but I did an internship while I studied abroad through CIS, and no, it wasn't paid. And I said this in my last video too, but I'm glad I did my internship, but if I could go back, I probably would have researched it more before making a decision. I also get questions about Westminster's reputation, University of Westminster. I think sometimes I see things about how it doesn't have the best reputation amongst people in London. I personally, all my classes were really good, and I actually like learned a lot from them. And I would say overall, like of kids who actually went there, everyone that I talked to really liked it. So I would give it a thumbs up rating. I had literally no problems with the school itself. I thought it was really good. All my professors were super nice, and the workload was like perfect. And I talked about this in my last video, but the emphasis on school in general, for me personally, was not there. But it also like didn't need to be. I did really well in my classes and I learned a lot, but I didn't have to labor over them. They were all project-based. We only met once a week. It was like my ideal situation. I also got a question about scholarships. My scholarship from my home university carried over to my study abroad experience because it was like I was just paying for a semester of regular school. So I don't know anything about like outside scholarships, but I know that there are companies who do give scholarships to international students studying abroad, and sometimes you don't even have to do anything. You just have to apply and they'll give you money. Or you can do ones that like you write an essay. I know that there are scholarships out there, so it's not like impossible to get a scholarship while studying abroad. I also get asked about the downsides and upsides to certain living locations, and I think I kind of answered this before, but like living in zone 1, obviously, I don't know if I'd call it ideal, but it's probably what most people look for, and I understand that. And I think being centrally located has its advantages for sure, and I think it's just like the obvious ones, just being closer to things, but it is more expensive. Grocery shopping, all those like daily tasks are gonna be more expensive as well. And then living in an outer zone, again, you're just further. That's like really the only disadvantage, because also you have access to like cheaper groceries, cheaper services. You get to see more of just like regular day-to-day life. I feel like I was exposed to more real students and real people who like lived in London and grew up in London. Just I feel like I saw a different side to London, but I also saw zone 1 and the intimate bits of zone 1. But those people who were in zone 1 didn't see the intimate bits of zone 4. So I personally, my personal take is that it's easier to live in zone 1, but it is more experiential to live in a different zone, like zone 4 in Harrow. Another question I get is how to get into clubs, because I mentioned in my last video that I went to a lot of them, which I did, and I went to a lot of Mayfair clubs, and I did go to the Box, which if you know, you know. And my short but sweet answer is just a promoter. If you are a girl, not hard to find one. You can find promoters on Instagram, on TikTok. By going to clubs, you'll probably find them. By just like being out, you'll meet ones. It's really not that hard. The way we met mine was one of my friends matched with this person on Tinder, actually. But it was like not a romantic match. The promoter was like looking for girls. So yeah, very much luck was how we stumbled into that situation, but I would definitely find a promoter that will take you out. It's the only way to get into those places. I would never just like walk in to anywhere like that. You know, you need to know someone, but it's not hard to know someone, so yeah. And then just like a big one I get is tips on going alone or how to make friends. Okay, I had to get a cup of tea for this question because I just did. My biggest piece of advice for being alone is just to say yes to everything and be open to new opportunities and new friendships. And I guess my biggest piece of making friends in general advice is just to be kind and be open. Sounds simple, but I feel like not everyone does that, and it goes a long way. Kindness and openness, and even if you're not inherently outgoing, which I am not, just to push yourself to be can make all the difference. And then in relation to being alone, I think there's a freeing aspect to being alone. No one knows you, which can be like, oh my god, no one knows you, but also like no one knows you. So you can be whoever you want to be, and you're free of any like past judgment and past experience, and you can just be exactly who you are right now. But then if you're struggling because you don't have a program that facilitates early friendships, I would say talk to people in your classes. That's a really easy way to bond with people. Talk to people in your dorms. Go to school-related events and talk to people there. And then just like ask people to hang out. Don't wait for other people to make the first step towards friendship, because they're probably just waiting for you to do that. Like, just ask people to hang out. Ask them to go grab a coffee. Ask them to go do something with you that you don't want to do alone. Ask them to go to a school-related event together. Get their number. Like, do all these little things. Go to the library with them. Just like put yourself out there, and people will come to you if you are open with your energy and your body language, and your persona is like kind and welcoming. And then also, if you're alone, like, don't be afraid of that, because again, like I said, doing things alone is welcomed in London, and in general doing things alone can be very beneficial and rewarding. And then if you're in a program, befriend those people. Not use them, but use those relationships as a starting point. Like, hang out with those people, and then you'll meet more people if you don't feel like necessarily your friends are in that group. And just be open at all times. 2 of my closest British friends I met because the tube stopped working, so we got in the same Uber together, and we were like, oh my god, we both go to Westminster. Let's be friends. And I'm still friends with those girls to this day. So be open to chance encounters, and just be willing to put yourself out there, because like, if it doesn't work out, who cares, right? You're in a new country, no one knows you. I'm not going to go into a full list of recommendations, but I am going to tell you, out of those things that I recommended in the last video, what things that I still think about and 2 years later I still miss. Camden Market, I think about you all the time. Camden Market, I miss you. Camden Market, I miss you so much. I feel like people say it's overrated, but I disagree so badly. Like, I think about it all the time. Also, I wish I went to the Coyote Ugly in Camden Market. I went to Coyote Ugly in Wales, but I wish I went to the one in Camden Market. So if you're in London right now, go to Coyote Ugly in Camden Market for me, okay? I miss Spitalfields Market as well. The food there was insane, and the shopping, so good. The photo booth, I miss Janky's matcha ice cream. I miss that so much. I miss an English breakfast at Weatherspoons, and I miss a Sunday roast at just any random pub. I miss nightlife and going out culture in London more than life itself. I miss like the 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock pint outside of a pub, like standing on the street, like drinking a pint with people in suits. I miss that so much. And just a club, any club in London. I would take being at any club in London right now over anything ever. But just like dancing, you know what? If you've seen Baby Girl and the rave scene, there are countless clubs in London that I've been to that give that energy. And I miss that feeling of being in a club and just dancing and having the best time ever. I also miss a London park more than anything. Also, parks in London are so magical to me. Kensington Gardens, Regent's Park. I miss Big Ben. I miss all of that. Just walking around with my headphones in one of those parks was like peak life. Like, life has not gotten better since then. I also miss Shoreditch and Chelsea and just Camden, Notting Hill. I miss all those areas. Bloomsbury I miss too, my little corner of London. I honestly miss it all, and I miss all the things that I didn't see and didn't experience, because I know that there's like probably so many things that I never saw that I would have loved, and hopefully we'll just see in the future. More than anything though, no matter what I say at the end of the day, like, it's important to just be you and have your own experience. This is such a singular moment in someone's life, studying abroad. You can't replicate someone else's journey, and you can't imitate another person's experience. You can only have your own, which I think is just the beautiful part about it. So I would just urge you all to have fun and be yourself and take advantage of every moment and just stay grounded and live in the moment. And yeah. So good night and good luck And I think this video may become a yearly tradition because next year I'm sure I will have a totally different view on studying abroad, because next year I might be in London at this time because I just got into grad school in London. So yeah. I'm so excited. So part of this is me giving advice to my future self as well, because I'm going to be going through all the emotions that I had 2 years ago over again in like 8 months. So I'm so excited, and I'm so excited for everyone else who is studying abroad. And yeah, good night and good luck to you and me both.